All right, hey everybody, we're here at the next Learning Bitcoin and Design session where we're going to be trying to talk about some of the technical concepts of Bitcoin, but from a design perspective, and just help each other learn about Bitcoin here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screens here, and let's see how badly I messed this up since I'm just now doing this fancy graphical background. I did it. Did I do it? I did it. Okay, cool. I know how to computer. Um, yeah, so I prepared this Figma document here, and got two comments or two people came forward with some ideas for this week. I remember whose name. What was it? Ghanbak was the username, and then Millie. So and Millie, a lot of your kind of questions were centered around like Neutrino and just kind of how all of that kind of stuff works. Um, and then, and also, what was it about just the different payment request formats, all the ridiculous number of QR codes and payment request formats we have and what they're all good for. And um, I wanted to spend more time focusing on some of those questions just because they're very complicated topics, and I know we've kind of talked about them a little bit on other calls, but I want to make sure like they're really important topics, and I just want to make sure that we're spending enough time so that everybody feels like they're comfortable with the topics. But I did want to kind of respond and provide some, you know, guidance to Ganbach. I'm not sure if they're on the call or not. I don't think so. I didn't recognize the username. Um, but they had asked just about how the design basically for shared wallets or wallets that are using multisig. Um, so I wanted to recommend that they check out two chapters in the guide. So there's this page right here. Can I open in a new tab with Figma open in this window? Can I do it? Create what? I just want to click the link. How do I do this, Big Jam?
You have like to click on the little link and it will.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
So these are the pages I was recommending for that. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot more that we need to work on for multisig in the guide in the future. But there's two pages on here that kind of try to talk about this topic. And they go into pretty good detail. Like um, there's some actual clickable prototypes that you can see for both of these. So there's a good bit of detail here already. And these just kind of go into these just go into like the different user flows that are, for multisig. For anyone who's not familiar with multisig, it's basically just the idea that, you would have a wallet that requires more than one key in order to spend funds. So it gives you security benefits because you could distribute the keys in different locations, or in the case of a shared account, you could have two or three people that all need to, you know, that might share the wallet or agree in order to spend funds, that kind of things. And so there's some prototypes for this one as well. So if you're interested in multisig, I would suggest starting there, and then we could talk about like if those pages need to be updated or anything like that. And then they also asked about channel management and all that, and just how to design for channel management. So they're curious about opening, designing for channel management. And it's like, well, we kind of all are. That's kind of an open problem that we're still kind of figuring out. So I recommend the pages I recommend. There's already a page called Funding a Wallet, and it goes into the user flows about like if somebody's starting a wallet for the first time, how do you get them their first payment channel? And then we're kind of talking about this in the wallet improvement channel, those of us that are doing the Blix design sprints, and Bosch has done a lot of work on this on the Zeus project. So I would, instead of trying to cover those topics in great detail in this call, I think I'd rather just point people to look at some of those areas, and then maybe on a future call we could talk about that stuff in more in depth. But I think where I really want to spend the most amount of time is just covering these two very deep topics here and just making sure that we feel comfortable with that. So I want to go ahead and give a pause there and see if anybody has any questions or comments before we get into any of these topics.
All good on my side.
Okay. Cool. So I'm gonna start here. So I think you had asked about the Bitcoin SPV clients, Neutrino, all of that. Yeah, just to clarify, sorry, I probably use the term under the hood a lot. That's just, I don't know, just kind of American English slang, but it's like under the hood of a car. When I, like, you can drive a car and be a perfectly good and safe driver and not really have any idea of how the car's engine works underneath the hood. And the reason I use that term kind of a lot when we're talking about Lightning is just because I think of I think in my mind that it's kind of like a car. You know, people are going to have to learn to use Bitcoin and Lightning wallets, and they should be made safe and easy to use and all of that, but they shouldn't need to know all of the inner workings of them. And the same with a car. Cars should be easy to drive and safe. You do have to learn a little, you have to learn how the rules of the road and how to operate the vehicle, obviously. So there's some practical knowledge. You need to know how to drive a car, but you don't need to know how the engine works in order to drive your car from one city to the next. But just to kind of like get into like what is SPV, what is neutrino, what are all these complicated words. So just as like a recap, I think we talked about this last week or the week before, but basically there's just this idea that any Bitcoin wallet needs to be able to get information about the blockchain. The blockchain, being the single source of truth, like mempool.space, I'm just going to bring that up, blockchain. So any wallet needs to be able to get this kind of data to be able to make determinations about things like what is the balance of the wallet, how much Bitcoin is in the wallet, has somebody sent me Bitcoin, if I sent somebody Bitcoin, what is the status of the payment? So those are all things that the wallet needs to be able to talk to the blockchain in order to understand. So how would a wallet get blockchain data? Does anybody know? Has anybody just scrolled that far down the document and they've already read it? They have to be able to talk to a Bitcoin node. That's kind of some of the diagrams I was showing off in a previous call. That the wallet needs to be able to talk to a Bitcoin node in some way. So this is, like we talked about before, this is Bitcoin Core. This is a Bitcoin node. It's just a computer running this piece of software, and it's got a copy of the blockchain. And one way that a wallet could talk to a Bitcoin node is the wallet is a node. Like you could actually run like this piece of software. You can use this as a wallet and as a node. So you could install this on your computer and you'd have a wallet and a Bitcoin node running on the same device. The pros, the advantages of this is that it's trust minimized. You're running your node and your wallet all together. You're verifying your own transactions. That's good. But the cons is that this is for advanced users. It's time consuming and it's not as easy for people who are just getting into Bitcoin. So what would be some other ways that you could do that? In my view, the kind of predominant way that Bitcoin wallets talk to nodes in like the middle years of Bitcoin, kind of like the, I don't know, 2014 to 2019 time period, was you would just use a centralized API. So let's say you have a wallet that's called CoolPay, and they're like, hey, we've got this super easy to use Bitcoin wallet, and you download it, and they're running some Bitcoin nodes at their company, and all your wallet does, like at their company, they're running their own Bitcoin node, and the wallet just connects to them to get the blockchain data. And so the pros of this is super easy for the wallet provider to build, and it's also super easy for the user. Making this happen is just the same way that we build other web apps. They just build like an internal company API. That may sound complicated, to us as designers, but these are the kinds of things that for like infrastructure engineers and backend developers is really not a big deal. So that's super easy from a development perspective, and it's super easy on the user. The cons is that the user is essentially trusting the wallet provider not to give bad information. So they're trusting CoolPay to never lie to them about what the state of the blockchain is. And that might seem like it's too far-fetched of a concern, but as we've seen a lot over the past couple of years, there's plenty of situations where companies decide, oh, I want to censor transactions here, or I want to cut off access to people in these parts of the world. So it's not really an ideal situation. So the solution to that is this thing called SPV, Simplified Payment Verification. And this idea was first talked about in the white paper, but I guess I would say it took a long time for the industry to kind of build these tools. So when a wallet uses SPV, when it uses Simplified Payment Verification, it just means that it's going to kind of solicit the rest of the Bitcoin network to get the information that it needs, but it doesn't have to carry its own copy of the blockchain. And like just kind of an example of how this would work is like let's say your phone has a Bitcoin wallet on it. Your phone doesn't have enough space to store the entire Bitcoin blockchain. It's like 400 gigabytes. You also don't want to be in a situation where you're trusting a single point of failure to give you accurate data. So you want to do it in a way that's more private, more secure, to where you're not trusting one person. So imagine this, like imagine you're traveling in a foreign country and you want to ask for directions, and you go up to somebody and you say, can you please tell me how to get to 123 Church Street? And so the advantage is you're going to get a really precise answer, but the disadvantage is it's a loss of privacy. You've just told this person exactly what your destination is. So this is going to sound silly, but imagine if you ask the person instead, can you tell me any streets that end, how to get to any streets that end in CH? And then imagine if the person told you how to get to every single street in that city that ended in CH. So the advantage of this situation is that it protects your privacy. You're not telling where you're going or what your destination is. The disadvantage is that it's an imprecise answer. You get a list of results, and most of these results aren't relevant to you, but somewhere in that list of results is the directions to 123 Church Street, right? Because it ends in CH. So a computer can easily sift through these irrelevant results and find what is needed. So that's a metaphor, but when wallets are using SPV, they're kind of like asking other Bitcoin nodes. They're saying they're asking for information about the blockchain in ways that don't leak their privacy, and they're able to figure out what they need to know from there. And the advantage is that we call this a light client. A light client does not need to hold its own copy of the blockchain. It is much lower on disk space, but also if SPV is done well, then they shouldn't lose any privacy or security in theory. So there's been a couple different approaches to that. There were many approaches, in the mid 2010s. There was some kind of controversy because some of those approaches didn't always do as well for privacy and security. So I guess in my view, the two most common approaches you see right now are called Electrum and Neutrino. Neutrino is an open source light client. So is Electrum. This one is mostly developed by Lightning Labs. There's no Neutrino logo to my knowledge, but me being a designer and wanting things to be visual, I slapped the Lightning Labs logo in there. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for that or not, but here we are. But there's technical things that that make these things different, and we probably shouldn't go into too much of that. But they both kind of serve a very similar purpose, which is just making it so that the wallet can securely, privately talk to Bitcoin nodes, not have to trust a single one of them, and get the information that they need. I've heard some concerns about privacy and security with Electrum. I think it's kind of debatable. It depends on who you ask. I don't think Electrum is a bad project. I think they're a good project. I guess in my view, I think it depends on how you implement Electrum. Like when you're building your wallet, I think that there's ways you can use Electrum that aren't very private, and then there's other ways you can use it that are private. But I stand to be corrected on that by a developer who knows what they're talking about. But that both of these projects essentially they're trying to do kind of similar things in my view. So when we talk about things like Neutrino. Oh, here's a little diagram I whipped up I forgot about. So this is an example of like, this is like, let's say a new company, it's not CoolPay, it's ZipPay. And let's say they're using Electrum or they're using Neutrino, and they're saying, hey, can anyone out there give me a list of addresses that end in CH? I'm pulling up my example of how do you get to 123 Church Street. So they're kind of asking the whole Bitcoin network. Or at the very least, they're not just asking one node, they're asking many nodes. Like I think Electrum is like your wallet will have like 10 nodes that it refers to, and but let's not get too deep into the weeds there. The point is that there's not this, when you use this setup here, there's not a single point of failure. Whereas if I scroll back up here to my example with the CoolPay wallet, you can see that there's this single point of failure. So one of these setups, if we zoom out and just look at them visually, one of these setups is more decentralized and more secure and more private than the other one. And so when we talk about SPV and Neutrino and Electrum, we're talking about stuff like this right here. And I could say most of the non-custodial Lightning wallets that I can think of use technology like this. I think Phoenix uses Electrum, Breeze uses Neutrino. I can't remember what Blixt uses. I want to say it's Neutrino, but I might be wrong on that. But the point is that most of your Lightning wallets that run on your phone are probably going to use something along these lines in order to figure out what's going on the blockchain. So that's just kind of a high level overview of like what Neutrino, SPV, all that is and why we use it. So anybody have any thoughts on that?
It was very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. If nobody has any questions on that, then I'll just move on to the topic of different payment request formats. We talked about this a little bit before, so if you guys want to just interrupt me at any point, if you have a question, just let me know. Just jump right in. I think you kind of phrased your question, Millie, is you were curious about what LNURL was, you're curious about what Lightning address was, and then like, why do we have so many different QR codes? So I kind of grouped that together as like one topic, just going over the different payment request formats. And like, really, when we talk about all these different payment request formats, the main issue is with Lightning, in my opinion. There's different types of payment formats in on-chain when you consider the fact that Bitcoin has been upgraded many times since 2009. So there's different like types of addresses, but I would say that just because of the way that Bitcoin on-chain and Bitcoin Lightning, they function in kind of different ways. There's not as much room in on-chain for wallets and services to be out of date or to be incompatible. Everybody who works on, main Bitcoin, they kind of need to be compatible with this piece of software right here with Bitcoin Core, which is the predominantly used Bitcoin node. So when we talk about on-chain, there's really not that many different request formats. It's really with Lightning. That's where things starts to get wild, because in Lightning, it's very fast-paced and people are developing stuff. And the thing about Lightning is that we can do experimental crazy things on Lightning without worrying about affecting the entire blockchain. Bitcoin Core developers have to be very cautious. Lightning developers can afford to be a little bit more reckless and experimental, in my opinion. So I think likely the industry is going to coalesce around a standard, but this is where we are right now. And we have kind of a page in the guide that talks about this a little bit. And I kind of, as I was like preparing like notes for this, I kind of was thinking I might want to submit some updates to this page, just to make things clear for readers. But, so we have a whole page, and Christoph went through and documented a lot of different payment request formats. But let's break down like which ones you should be worried about. So like, here's the top 2 payment request formats that you should worry about. And just for perspective to zoom out, I've got a whole bunch of them here, and like I'll get to all of them, but I just wanted to start here on the left-hand side with the ones I thought were the most important. On chain, this is like sending to a Bitcoin wallet. Like he says BC1Q, blah, blah, blah. If I go over here to the Mempool Explorer, the block explorer, and I click on one of these blocks here, and it's taking a long time to load. Here, let me click on this transaction. You see, oh, those are old address types. Yeah, so if I scroll down here, wow, here we go. See, BC1Q, BC1Q, they all kind of start that way. These are on-chain addresses. So when we talk about on-chain address formats, that's really what we're talking about. It's the kind of thing that's going to be included in a block on the blockchain. Right. The use case, you'd use this to send on-chain transactions for the user. I think that means that's sending large amounts of money. That's where the user, that's the value it provides the user. The drawbacks is that on-chain is slower and more expensive. The transaction fees are higher, and it takes 10 minutes to an hour to feel confident that your transaction is good to go. In Lightning, the most predominantly used format is Bolt 11. This is kind of the industry standard. I can't think of a Lightning wallet that doesn't support this format. You see it's much larger. And what this is it's kind of like instructions for how to route something to my node. And it's much denser. It's got a lot more detail in this QR code. You can see it's bigger. So the use case is for sending Lightning payments. For the user, this means you're going to send money quickly, you're going to send money cheaply, and it's going to work with every Lightning wallet. So sending money cheaply, quickly with every Lightning wallet, that's what this thing here does for the user. The drawbacks are that it only works for one payment. For technical reasons, which I don't want to, maybe we should save this for another time, but for technical reasons, you can't use this thing more than once. There's a security risk if you try and use this QR code again. So every time I want to receive a payment from you, I need to give you a new one of these QR codes. It's a one-time use only. So that's kind of one of the drawbacks from this. And you can't just make it on your own. Like if you want to send me Bitcoin, I have to give you the QR code. That's where it starts to become a little problem. Then the other one, this is maybe me kind of shelling my own bags here, but this is kind of the one that we're talking about in the unified QR code channel right here. And it's the BIP21 QR code is what we call it in technical terms. We're kind of trying to come up with a more user-friendly name for it. You look at this kind of gobbledygook mess down here, but what this really is it's a combination of these two. So that's why I have the little arrows drawing and pointing these things two together. If you actually dig into what this stuff says here, it's basically a combination of those two codes and some other metadata. So the use case for this is this lets you send a Lightning and an on-chain payment. And for the user, I think that this would allow a user to send money, large amounts and small amounts, and they don't have to think about what kind of wallet the person that they're sending the money to is using. So that's the benefit they would get. The drawbacks for this are that it's just not widely adopted yet. That's kind of why we're trying to do a campaign right now and get a conversation started in the industry about it, but it's not widely adopted.
Why it's not widely adopted? Like what? Yeah.
I think just so that's a good question. Why is it not widely adopted? Let me give a little bit of background here. This code right here, it kind of is widely adopted, just not in Lightning. So I'm gonna take a bunch of crap out of here. 1 second. Let me take all the Lightning crap out of this. So this right here is widely adopted. I know this looks like some gobbledygook, but I'll translate it real quick. It's basically saying, use this Bitcoin address. This is the amount of Bitcoin I want. And this is the memo. It says for lunch Tuesday. So it's this is the, this is where to send it to. This is how much to send. This is who to send it to. This is widely adopted. This was created, this concept of this kind of format was created long before Lightning came about. So most wallets that are on-chain only, Bitcoin wallets, support this format right here. So that already works. The part that's a little bit like, I guess you'd say a newer idea. I'm not sure where the idea originated from, to be perfectly honest, but the new idea is putting this like and Lightning tag at the end, because this format allows you to include other data in here. Like I could say like, and potato equals tomato, and pets equal cats. I could just put like random gibberish, and wallets are designed so that if there's some data in here that they don't understand, just ignore it, right? So the novel thing is we're like, well, if we can put extra data in there, we could put and Lightning in there, and the Lightning wallets would accept it, and the Bitcoin wallets, on-chain wallets, would not, and that's perfectly fine, right? So this part is widely adopted, but it's the Lightning one that isn't widely adopted yet, and I think that it's because with any format, you have to. It's like if you're the first one, you're kind of at a disadvantage. Like I think one wallet provider said in a tweet that they had actually thought about making their wallet actually create these QR codes, but because nobody else was able to scan them yet, they didn't want to do it. So, but some wallets do. So I think our first step is just to get more wallets to accept scanning this, and then in the future, wallets can decide if they want to actually generate these QR codes. But for now, just making it so that wallets can read the format would be a healthy first step, I think. Does that answer the question, Will?
Yeah, David is asking like, is it not widely adopted because not all wallets have not adopted Lightning yet?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say that, because if a wallet hasn't adopted Lightning, they should still be able to read this just fine.
Yeah.
Like if I go look, see, Bitcoin, BIP21. If this thing came around, oh wow, this goes back even further than I thought. I thought this was like a 2014 thing. This is a 2012. So when we say BIP21, it's because this is like the proposal that somebody made to create this thing. So this goes back as far as 2012. And so this whole format, you can see, this probably looks familiar. This may look familiar. This is the kind of example I was just showing on my screen here, where I was saying there's like a memo, like a little message in there, and it tells you how much they want and which address to send it to. So this proposal is actually very old. So every on-chain wallet, every regular Bitcoin on-chain wallet in existence should already support this format. And if they don't have the Lightning part, that's okay. If they don't support Lightning yet, they can just use this part of the code. Like, let me go over here to this one. They would use this part, and they would ignore this part right here. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think it's not widely adopted just because we're still very early, and I mean, we're building this infrastructure, so there's a lot of actors in there, and
yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think it's just I don't know why most people haven't thought about it. I don't have a good answer. I don't know exactly why people haven't adopted it yet, but but for some reason that's where we are.
Yeah, and you don't think it would be because of a technical issue regarding this type of?
I'll tell you why. I have a better answer for why nobody has adopted it yet. It's because there's other problems. When it comes to Lightning and payment request formats, there's other problems that people are busy trying to solve. Is why I think it is.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So what it is like right now with the UI, one thing that we've been having a lot of conversation about is this idea of like, you have a wallet that has on-chain and Lightning, and then the user has like two tabs. They've got the Lightning tab and the Bitcoin tab, and it confuses people. And they're not sure what the difference is. And if somebody hands them a QR code format they can't scan, they don't know what to do with it. So that's like, as designers, I think a problem that feels very upfront and real to us. It's something in the user interface that we can see as confusing users. But there's other problems with Lightning, like the fact that you have to generate this thing every single time, or the fact that it's just a giant QR code that is complicated and hard to understand. So these are other problems with Lightning, and so a lot of these other request formats are over here are aimed at solving those other problems. And so I don't think that I think that with this QR code right here, the main issue is just that people have been busy solving other problems, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's good because there are plenty of other problems to solve. Now, I will say another. You brought up the issue of technical problems. Now, one technical problem I can say with this QR code, which we do need to work on, is the fact that look at this. So like, see how like there's not that much data in here. The blocks are really big. And then I go over here and there's more data in this string. So the blocks have to get really tiny. And then you start to look at this and it's like, it's so detailed. I mean, I bet this looks like a scrambled mess to everybody looking at this on Jitsi, because the compression of the video is probably, turning this thing into a kaleidoscope. It's so much detail. And sometimes the cameras, especially older phones, will actually have problems scanning these really detailed QR codes. And that's an issue. I've run into that problem in person very much. If you're using a brand new phone that just came out last year, you probably don't have any issue. But if you're using a phone from 5 years ago or a real cheap budget phone, it might have trouble scanning. And so that's definitely a problem that we have to work through with this QR code, and really any kind of QR code. Well, and that actually segues into one of our next formats here. So this is called, sorry, go on.
I think Mogashni has a question.
Oh, sorry about that. What's up?
Thanks, Millie. I have a question. Yeah, I hope it comes across clearly. There's the on-chain, and then there's Bolt 11, which essentially makes up BIP21. And like on the UI side of things, like what is kind of conveyed to users, or like educate? Are they like educated, or is it just like if a wallet's using on-chain, as a QR code, then they're using on-chain, and that's that. They're not like educated like this is on-chain used in this wallet. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to clarify one thing you said there, I think yeah, so just to be clear, Bolt 11 is different than BIP21. I know it's confusing. They all begin with B and end in random numbers. But specifically, yeah, this one is for on-chain, this one is for Lightning, and then this one here is like kind of a combination of the two. And
Yeah.
so you want to see like what's conveyed to the user. I might just turn to a visual example, because I think our funding wallet page has some examples here. I'm trying to think, because Bosch had done some mock-ups of this kind of thing, and I just want to, if I can turn to existing examples, that might be a better use of our time. I'm trying to remember which page it's on. So oh, I know. Let's go to the Bitcoin UI. I feel like there was something. Let's see, receiving. No, it's not in this one either. Yeah, so I don't know, where it may be that it's been taken out of the guide now, but like just to provide an example, like let's say I am requesting, requesting Bitcoin, and I'm going to say type in how much I want. Let's say I open up my phone and I type in, 1000 and hit request, requesting 1,000 sats. And right now, if we move towards this idea of BIP21, it would just create this QR code right here. And it's just one of them. It's just a single one. And really, in this simplified model here, it doesn't even convey to the user at all that it's on chain or Lightning. The idea being, like, why bother asking the user if the single QR code, if it is able to, on a technical level, communicate to the other wallet all the information to accomplish both tasks, it's like, why bother explaining it to them? Now, some wallets though that don't use this QR code would do something like let me go to let me just like mock something up real quick here. Like, a lot of times it'll just be something like it'll say something like Lightning. Let me make this like white and give it like a black outline or something like that. Gray outline, good enough. So it'll just have like a tab that's like, Lightning or on chain, right? And then here, I'll just copy one of these. And then it might have like a little, thing where it, asks you for your amount or whatever. And, I'll just put a little phone screen in the background here just to make myself feel complete about this. So that's the way a lot of wallets are handling it right now. You just have like this little tab that like lets you switch, and you tap this button and you get this QR code, and you tap this button and it gives you another QR code. It doesn't really, a lot of them don't really communicate that much from what I've seen. Does that answer your question, or did I miss the mark?
Yeah, that was exactly my question. Perfect. Thank you. Really, that's been really helpful.
Now, so this format here, like I mentioned, is incredibly dense. And even this format is incredibly dense. So there's this thing called Bolt 12 here, which the use case for this is the same as when you're sending Lightning payments. You can also make withdrawals from them, which is kind of interesting. You can scan them and actually withdraw money instead of sending it. And the thing that's really cool about these is you can reuse them over and over again. So there's no security risk to reusing this QR code. So from the user perspective, that means you could send money quickly and cheaply, and you could reuse this. You could put this code on a tip jar. You could put it on the side of a food truck, whatever. The main drawback, in my view, is that it hasn't been widely adopted yet. Maybe some developers have some more in-depth criticisms of it, but that's the main drawback I can see right now from a design perspective, is just that not every Lightning implementation has adopted it yet. But you can see that the QR code is much tinier because the text is much tinier. So in the future, what we're going to be able to do is, you see how I'm saying that this QR code essentially contains both of these things? Well, in the future, if this becomes widely adopted, we'll be able to replace this. I'll be able to say bloop, and I'll just be able to put a Bolt 12 in there instead of a Bolt 11. And that will make this QR code, it will make it smaller, so it'll be less detailed, and it will be reusable as well. So that's kind of where that might be headed. Really, for the time being, though, the main formats most people are concerned with are these two formats right here, and hopefully in the near future, we'll be concerned with just this format, and that can be that. I'll deep dive. I'll go like real quick into like some of these other like formats here, just because you'll hear them thrown around. AMP is kind of neat. That's like kind of a Lightning Labs L&D kind of thing, and not so. What I mean when I say it's a Lightning Labs LND kind of thing is that if a wallet uses LND as its Lightning implementation, just meaning under the hood it uses LND, it means it supports this feature. I don't think other wallets use it, so I don't think C Lightning uses it. I don't think Eclair uses it. So not every wallet's going to support this, but it's a cool idea. And like the use case is that it sends the Lightning payment over multiple paths. And for the user, that means send money quickly and cheaply, but also it means that payments have a higher chance of succeeding. So every once in a while in Lightning, you run into this problem where the payment that you're trying to send, it can't find an appropriate path through the Lightning network, and your payment fails. And that can be incredibly frustrating, especially for a user who doesn't understand why it's happening. So kind of what they're trying to do with AMP is that this payment takes multiple paths. So like it takes like a payment that's like, you want to send 100,000 sats over the Lightning network. Well, it'll split it up into like, say 10 smaller payments, right? And route those across different paths. And it'll actually have it might have a higher chance of succeeding. Drawback is it's not widely adopted yet. So like AMP is totally cool. I dig the idea. I wouldn't, we do list it on the payment request format page. I probably wouldn't stress about this too much because, it's just, there's just got to be more wallet support for it before we really have a conversation about getting it adopted, I think. Not just wallet support, really what it is, in my opinion, it's got to be that you got to have all of the major Lightning implementations have to coalesce around this as like the standard way of doing multi-path payments. So we're not at the point yet where I think we can really have a conversation about this yet as designers. This is still in the developers need to figure things out phase. That's my take on it. I could be wrong on that. Node ID, similar kind of thing. This is just like, this looks real complicated, but I mean, basically all this is it's like let's say this is Alice's public key. Then it's like, hey, this is Alice's public key at this IP address. So it's basically just like the address to somebody's Lightning node. And basically there's this technique called key send where you can send it directly to their node. And it's kind of cool because it's kind of like you could make a tip jar out of this. You could send somebody money without asking them for an invoice first. But again, probably it's not widely adopted. I think that's some copy pasta. That's just me copy pasting crap. Let me just throw a shrugging emoji. I think there's a couple different Lightning implementations that support this yet. I think LND and C Lightning both support it. It did not like my shrugging emoji. It like put like, I guess like the male gender symbol and like a blank space. So honestly, I don't know what's going on. So I'm just going to delete all that. But my kind of takeaway with this format is that there's no way to get proof of payment that I'm aware of. That you can send somebody money using this method here, but there's not really a good way to get proof that they actually received the money. So, I mean, that might be okay for a tip jar, but I don't like that idea that you can't get proof of payment. So, could be there's something I'm not understanding about this format. I'll just call this key send because that's what they call it when you send to a node ID. There could be something I'm not getting. There could be newer developments, like newer ideas that developers have about this that makes this more usable and allows you to get proof of payment. So, but I kind of lock this into the same category as AMP. I kind of think that this is still in the territory of the developers need to kind of figure out how to make this work. And I don't see these ideas as ready for discussion by designers yet, but that's like what's going on with that. Now, the ones that are being used, that are kind of already being used in production a lot is LNURL. And LNURL is basically Oh, before I dive into LNURL, did anybody have any like questions on any of this kind of stuff before I dive deeper into LNURL? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna dive into LNURL. So like the use case for this, again, if you're not a developer, this probably just looks like more code gobbledygook, but um, the basic idea is the use case is this is gonna be used to retrieve Lightning invoices that can be used to pay. So this thing over here that I was calling Bolt 11 earlier, I should really put some parentheses here. I should really say this is a Lightning invoice because that's what it really is in more colloquial terms. So LNURL is just a way of getting Lightning invoices. So the use case is, this is that use case I keep talking about. If you want to send money to somebody without asking them first, if I want to send Magashni money and she's in a different time zone and she's already asleep, I don't want to have to, wake her up and say, can you send me a Lightning invoice? So LNURL is good for that kind of thing. Kind of drawbacks are you need an LNURL server to run it. And like, this is me kind of going off into my own opinions here, but I kind of think, does the user have to set up their own LNURL server? And that's kind of advanced. Or do they have to trust a company to run the LNURL server? And do they have to trust that provider? So that would be kind of one of the drawbacks to LNURL. But in the meantime, it does kind of solve a problem. So like, let's say, let's look at that. Alice is the sender. So she wants to send money to Bob, the recipient. But again, Bob's in another time zone. He's asleep, busy filling coffee orders. I don't know, whatever. But Bob has an LNURL pay QR code. So she's able to scan it. And this is just what's happening under the hood. This is not what the user needs to worry about. Alice's node it scans the QR code, right? It asks the LNURL server for an invoice. The LNURL server says, hey, Bob's node, can you send me an invoice? Bob's node sends the invoice to the LNURL server. The LNURL server sends Alice's node the invoice. And then Alice is able to effectively route the money through the Lightning Network using the invoice that it got from the LNURL server, right? So a lot of the examples we looked at on earlier calls, when we were just talking about, well, how does money get routed through Lightning? We were talking about this down here. We were saying, okay, Alice already has this Bolt 11 invoice right here that I'm highlighting. She's got it, and she's routing the money through the Lightning Network. Well, this kind of, what LNURL does is it provides this other layer here so that her wallet can just basically fetch an invoice without having to bother Bob's node. That's what LNURL does. And then Lightning address is kind of a layer on top of that. And it says, what if, Alice wanted instead to send to Bob's Lightning address? And just hit the paste button. Where it went up there, it pasted in place. There we go. So I'm just going to drag this down here so we can see it. So instead of, scanning an LNURL barcode, she's just like, oh, I'm going to send the coin to Bob at, bobscoffee.com or something like that. And what this is her wallet, if it's a Lightning address compatible wallet, it knows, okay, what I really want to do is I want to take the data. I want to query bobscoffee.com, and let's say that bobscoffee.com is actually an LNURL server. Right? So I'm just gonna, and it knows that it can query bobscoffee.com and it can make a request or something that's like, user equals Bob and amount equals 1,000 sats and blah, 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 right? It can turn, her wallet knows how to turn this into this, and it just checks with the LNURL server, it gets an invoice, and then it's able to pay, routing it through the Lightning Network. And Alice, and that's back to that term I used, under the hood. All of this happens under the hood. It happens inside the wallet. It happens between these servers and while it's communicating with each other. But Alice, as a human being, doesn't have to think about all of that stuff that's happening. So I think lightning address is a good idea. I think LNURL is a good idea. My current opinion is I do kind of see these drawbacks of that. I feel like we have to trust whoever's running this LNURL server. But that's not to say that there aren't solutions to that. I think that's kind of where we're at the moment. But there's people doing cool stuff with both of these formats right here. If I had to rank these, if I had to rearrange these in terms of like which ones you need to be like most concerned with as a designer, I'm going to move all of these over to the right because, again, I think that that's kind of still in developer land. I would say that LNURL and lightning address are kind of, they're being used in production already. So that's something we should be concerned with. I think Bolt 12 is probably on the horizon for the near future. So yeah, if we're just going from left to right here, I think these are the ones to be the most concerned with. Keep in mind that this is coming soon. You might be working on a project where you have to think about these formats. And then this stuff is just kind of still under discussion and debate right now. That would be my assessment of the situation with formats. Group that a little tighter. Yeah. So how's everybody feeling about that?
That's very cool.
Yeah, I love the fact that you like laid all of them and tell what it is for the user. Like it really helps like to understand. Thank you so much for that.
Really, thanks a lot, Stephen. Absolutely brilliant as always.
No, thank you. Yeah, I was kind of thinking about like submitting a PR or something to this page here for the payment request formats. Like, I was kind of wondering if it would be more helpful on this page if we had some stuff kind of like this, where we broke it down into like, what does it mean for the user? What are the use cases? What are the drawbacks? That kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Though it does, the page does get into that already, I think, in some of the paragraph text, but I thought it would make the page more skimmable for designers if we had them kind of broken down into these little nice subheadings, stuff like that. Cool. So how are we feeling? Any like questions on the topic of payment request formats? Or anything you guys want to chat about?
So far, no. I'm gonna take the time to digest this information, and if I have like question, I'll write you on Slack.
Cool.
Or one of the channels.
Awesome. So I guess we just got to think about what kind of stuff we want to get into next week. Same as always, I'll put like a call link or something. I'll make a post about the call time on Slack, and people can post in the thread and all of that. Does anybody have any ideas at the moment? Like happen to have any ideas right now about things they might want to learn about next week? Or
one thing that popped in my mind is like, I mean, I don't know if it's enough like related to Bitcoin, but like the state of user research in Bitcoin industry, like what are the general population perception of Bitcoin? I don't know what you see as a, like this is, of course, it's a huge like UX challenge, but one thing that I want to know as well, like for example, even for wallets that are deemed to say very simple, I feel there's such like a lack of education, like explaining what it is. We sort of like throw the user in there and hope them that they do something okay. Anyways, it's not just, I mean, it's not really a question I'm asking you, like I'm just dumping my thoughts on you,
yeah.
but yeah.
think that's right. And I think there's been so much conversation about research lately. I mean, I almost feel like we need to just have like a call that's just focused on like research. Maybe we should talk about this on like the next design guide jam call, or like I said, just have like a research call, because there was that Slack thread somebody started that just the Slack thread just went down the screen for miles and
That
miles.
was me, Stephen.
No,
that
it
was
wasn't.
me.
Oh, you
Yeah.
started? Okay. I mean, I sorry, I didn't go on for miles. It went on for kilometers. But yeah, there was a lot of conversation there, and I feel like every time I go to an event and speak about Bitcoin design, one of the questions that I get is, what is the state of research? Do you do research? And the answer is always like, well, some people do it, but not enough. So I mean, it may be that we need as a community to think about having more of a focus on that topic. So yeah, I think that'd be a really good discussion topic. I think that's actually a good discussion topic for like a whole other call, just outside of this one. Another topic you had raised, Millie, was a WebLN.
Yeah.
And I didn't address it today. One, because I felt like we should really focus on some of these kind of like fundamental concepts first, but also because I'd be curious if we wanted to talk about WebLN on a future call. Like, it might be good to get like Johns or Boomy or somebody like that on the call, because I think they just have a far greater wealth of knowledge on that topic than I do. I mean, in short, the basic idea, as I understand it, is just kind of having a spec for like websites and Lightning to be able to talk to each other. So like, you had a Lightning browser extension, you would want to be able to use it to make a payment on an e-commerce website, right? But I don't really know too much about the spec beyond that. So I would like to get someone more knowledgeable on that topic to talk about that. So that could be a potential topic for another week too, if we want to do that. But yeah, I'll post a link for next week, and we can see how people reply and what people want to learn about in the future.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah, no
Thanks
problem.
very much, Stephen. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I guess with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up today, and I will kill this recording.